everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio in association with 24 Flicks. This is the Comedy in the Kingdom Tour with a very special guest today, a member of the Comedy in the Kingdom Tour. In this comic right here is able to provide you a talented, award-winning comic slash motivational speech of the year. That's funny, clean, and uplifting. He's a three-time inspirational Country Music Association Comedian of the Year and the LOL GCA, that stands for Living on Laughter Gospel Comedy Association Spirit of Laughter Award. With no further ado, and also a very good friend to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show and breaking down the four walls. With no further ado, please welcome the very funny and talented Kenny Cornbread Robinson. What's up, Cornbread?
Hey, I'm fine as frog hair split four ways. I tell you, my head's swelling up so big I don't know if it'll fit on the screen after you said all those nice things about me. But hey, it's great to be with you, and this has been a really exciting year. I haven't done as many comedy shows this year because my consulting business is really booming, but I just got through doing 4 shows September and October with some of the best comedians, and some of them I think are probably on your tour. I went up to Delaware, did some shows with Don Hines up there, then back down into North Carolina with Big Daddy. Did 2 weekends, one in North Carolina and one in South Carolina with Big Daddy and light skinned Bobby Brown, and then and then wound up going up to the DC area, and right there outside of DC, your old stomping grounds, we had the LOL conference there. Yeah. It was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Comedians from 16 states and Canada got to hang out with Leland Clausen from Canadian comedian that's now got a couple of movies out on Prime Video and on Tubi. Extraordinary and Sleeper Agent. Got to hang out with him. Actually roomed with him for 3 or 4 days. And then also Joey Aiello from Branson that has the Redneck bus tour out there.
Sure.
But yeah, we had a really fun 4 weeks in a row, just knocking out shows all up and down the East Coast. And so it's good to be back with you. I've missed being able to do your show as much as I did back in the spring. So good to be with you, Maurice.
Well, it's good to have you back, Cornbread. You are certainly a friend of the show, particularly breaking down the 4 walls. You were talking about Leland Clausen. Leland's in Sleeper Agent, which is a very, very funny film.
It is.
And also a dramatic lead role in Extraordinary. And yes, both of which, as you mentioned, can be acquired on the Prime Video platform, Prime Video, Amazon Prime, whatever it's called these days. You can get it on that platform, and as well as PureFlix. But yeah, we've got a lot of comedians that we're very familiar with. We've been working with quite a bit through the years. Roxanne David, who is the founder of LOL GCA, is going to also now be a part of the tour. And we've got, Don Davis Womack, who told me to let you know, to send Cornbread a big hello. Also a part of the tour. We've got Leland, we've got Gilbert Esquivel, we've got Danny Successful Simmons out of Atlanta, Georgia, Willie Brown, the ventriloquist, Mark Christopher Lawrence, who's been in The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith, and also with Arnold Schwarzenegger in, my gosh, forget that popular film he did. Did like the Terminator yes. 2. He was in Terminator 2. He's been in 38 feature films. I could go on and on talking about Mark. We've got a lot of fine comedians a part of the tour. And the Comedy in the Kingdom tour coming your way next summer, the summer of 24. We're putting in God's hands. We want the world to see that Christians are slap your knee funny and howlingly funny, just as funny as Dave Chappelle or Kevin Hart or Jerry Seinfeld, any of these other guys out there. But world has to get the opportunity to meet them and see them, you know as well as I do, we've got some really funny comedians. Kason out of Los Angeles. List goes on and on.
Yeah, I've done a lot of shows with Kason, and he just, he's writing. He's with Jimmy Fallon's show now, right? Ain't he one of the writers on that show now?
He is one of the writers on The Problem with Jon Stewart, the former host of The Daily Show on Comedy.
Okay.
So he's on that. He's a staff writer on that show now, doing really well. And he's going to be one of our guys. And we're just as happy as we can be about putting this tour together, and certainly glad to have you a part of it. You're talking about the LOLGCA. Roxanne David has put together quite a conference for Christian comedians. And then there's another one called the CCA, the Christian Comedy Association. Tell us a little bit about that organization, Kenny.
All right. The CCA was started probably 20 years ago by Chonda Pierce, who, holds the record for selling the most comedy DVDs of anybody in any genre. She's sold probably 30 million DVDs.
Wow.
And most of them at her conferences. And the most famous comedian or most popular, successful comedian that a lot of people have never heard of, but she does women's conferences and literally has just sold millions and millions of DVDs and just sells out wherever she goes. But she started it at her place in Nashville. Her and her husband at that time had a large tract of land outside of Nashville called the Funny Farm. And so she invited about 20 of her Christian comedian friends to come and spend the weekend and just have a retreat. And out of that evolved the Christian Comedy Association that at its heyday probably had 300 attendees coming. I've attended it. It was nationwide. I attended out in Los Angeles. I attended in Atlanta, Nashville. Right now it's moved. It's scaled back somewhat. It's become more of back to a retreat and less of a conference, but they still have 50, 60, 75 comedians that go up to Indianapolis. And there's a Gutty's comedy club there that they do a lot of things in partnership with Gutty's Comedy Club there in the Indianapolis area. And a lot of things we're trying to find ways that LOL and GCA can do more things together. So that's one thing that I know Roxanne has had a desire to do for a number of years. And I know she's been meeting with some of the leadership, and we've got some people that are in both associations. Junebug, for one, is very active in both associations. And so they're trying to find ways that we can work together.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show, the Comedy in the Kingdom Tour edition on Bog Radio, in association with 24 Flicks, with comedian Kenny Cornbread Robinson, talking about the Comedy in the Kingdom Tour, which is coming your way the summer of 2024. If you are a Christian entrepreneur out there and you want to open up your checkbook and you're really interested in what we're talking about, you want to support, sponsor, or just get more information, hey, contact me at Maurice Brown Comedy Hour at gmail.com or Maurice Brown LLC at gmail.com, or just give me a call at 703-357-6675. And I'd love to talk with you about that. We're going to give you, the audience, a little snippet of Kenny Cornbread Robinson. Absolutely hilarious comedian, 3-time winner of the Country Music Award, Inspirational Comedian of the Year on the Maurice Brown Comedy Show. Ladies and gentlemen, check him out, Kenny Cornbread Robinson.
Okay. Well, now I start talking, anytime I'm anywhere, people make some kind of assumptions about me, and I want to set some of you straight on that right off the bat, okay? There's some of you out there right now done made your mind up that I'm illiterate, okay? My mom and daddy was married well over 3 weeks before I was born, so I'm not illiterate at all, okay? Now, there's folks that would say that people only married 3 weeks shouldn't be starting a family, but it wasn't like they just met each other and everything. I mean, they've been first cousins all their lives, so, you know. Now, the kids down there at the trailer park, they made fun of me. They did. They knew I was inbred and corn-fed, and they'd make fun of me, but I had the last laugh on them because, see, being inbred, I was born with 6 toes on each foot. Guess who was the first kid in that trailer park who could count to 22? I come from a really, really big family. I'm one of 15 kids, 10 boys and 6 girls. And this, I'll name them for you there just a second. They say there was Chris and Sammy and Alex and Floyd and Homer and Eugene. That's the 6 sisters. I can't remember all the brothers' names. But we grew up in a little bit town called Big Stone Gap, Virginia. Y'all ever heard of Big Stone Gap, Virginia? It's a little bit of town right there on the Kentucky border. You know, Kentucky being the state what invented the toothbrush. If it had been invented in Virginia, they would call it a teeth brush. But if you saw them Kentucky people, you know why they call it a toothbrush.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if you see those Kentucky people, you know exactly why they call it a teeth brush. Anyway, Kenny, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I mean, there's a reason why you won the Country Music Award Inspirational Comedian of the Year 3 years in a row. And I want to thank you once again for being a part of the Comedy in the Kingdom tour. Kenny, I before we get into the conversation about all things comedy, because I want to ask you some particular questions about that. How did you get started on the comedy road?
Well, I'll tell you, I had grown up in the church and had taught adult Sunday school classes, and I found that if I used humor in my classes, people paid more attention than if I just was sort of dry and boring. And I was working for Virginia Department of Transportation, and one of the inspector conferences where the construction inspectors get together, 100 construction inspectors, they had asked, could they have a comedian instead of a motivational speaker? And so the people at the central office of VDOT in Richmond said, well, you cannot have a comedian. That they just wouldn't look right if it got in the papers or on the TV, but we can get you a motivational speaker that will keep you laughing. So they asked me to come, and I went and spoke. And so I found that they liked my comedy a whole lot better than they did the motivational parts of my talk. And so then I went up and I was working in the DC area as we were negotiating to build the hot lanes around 495. And I found out I was up there for 4 months on a temporary assignment, staying in a hotel. And I found out that you could actually take stand-up comedy classes over at the DC Improv.
Yeah.
And so I took 6 weeks of stand-up classes, followed up by 4 weeks of joke writing classes taught by Matt Kazam. Matt's out in Vegas now. He headlined out at the Riviera for a while before it was tore down and replaced. And he still teaches comedy, but he teaches now to corporate executives instead of to aspiring comedians like myself. But I took 10 weeks of classes and got the headline, The Graduation Show. And basically, Matt said, Kenny, you're funny enough to be a professional comedian, but you got to pay your dues. And I said, well, what's that entail? He said, well, you got to do open mics, and you probably need to be on stage 150, 200 times before you're good enough that people want to buy tickets. Okay. So I wound up taking another temporary assignment back to Northern Virginia, and I started knocking out open mics. Monday night, I would go over to Tyson's Corner and hit, you probably remember Wiseacres.
Okay.
Tuesday night, I was in D.C. at the Topaz Hotel.
Yeah.
Wednesday night, I was over in Arlington at Dr. Dreamo's.
Okay.
And Thursday night, anywhere I could find an open mic from Fredericksburg up into Baltimore, I was going wherever. And so over the next 18 months, I did my 150, 200 open mics.
Yeah.
Paid my dues, learned how to deal with hecklers and joke writers and people stealing your jokes and all the
Yeah.
things that go with.
Yep.
And I just found though that the comedy clubs, I still do them occasionally, but I just found like that my comedy was more suited for churches, for charities, for corporate events,
Yeah.
and that was my niche. So I did a couple of comedy clubs this year, and I'll do a few every year. But my main focus now is primarily, like I say, churches, charities, and corporate events.
Yeah, and I think that was a great choice you made in the sense that you got to find out what your niche is, and I think
Correct.
doing the mics is beneficial in getting that stage time, getting your timing down, dealing with situations that are not necessarily ideal. I mean, you have to win over crowds that may not be able to relate to your humor, and
You're
just
right.
facing that. Brian Regan, who's a very, very funny comedian, talked about, when he was in his formative stages of comedy, there was a club that he would perform in every night, but they would bring in demographics every night, each different demographics every night as well. And he noticed that some comedians didn't perform on certain nights because they didn't feel like they could cater to that particular
Correct.
demographic. Brian Regan said that means you don't want to be a real comedian.
Yeah.
And if you see Brian Regan, he's a real comedian. But Brian Regan would perform in front of anyone.
Right.
He took that as learning opportunities. And back to what you said about getting out there, getting your 150 to 200 appearances out there. It's all about just learning how to, one day perform in front of whatever your niche may be.
Correct.
Because comedy is a skill. I mean, you can be
Right.
funny at a dinner party. You can be funny in the break room at work. You can be funny in social situations. That's not stand-up comedy. And a lot of people get that confused.
Right.
You can be funny, but translating that to the stage is a learned skill.
Correct. There's a lot in stand-up is about learning how to be an entertainer.
Yeah.
There's like you say, there's winning the audience over. There's understanding that not every joke's going to work the same every night, like you say, with every demographic. And so you learn that if something is working with the particular audience you're with, you learn how to segue into that and how to, when you find what it is that they're looking for, then you can run with that. And it's having, over the last 20 years, I've written 3,000 jokes, but I have about 200 that's in my normal working rotation. And on any particular night, I want to, depend on how much time, whether I'm the feature or the opener or the headliner, I'm going to do anywhere from 20 to 40 of those 200 jokes.
Yeah.
But some of the best ones is when you're doing it and that waitress drops a plate of dirty dishes, or somebody in the audience just is, sometimes you find that person in the audience that you make a connection with, and you can just play off them and do crowd work. And it's all just coming, just free flow. And some of those are some of your most favorite nights to work. And then you hope that somebody recorded it so that you can hopefully write some of that stuff down and use it again.
Yes,
it's all unplanned.
It's all unplanned. Some of your best jokes come from just being spontaneous and
correct
playing off of an audience member or situation, and you come
right.
up with a joke, and you hope again, yes, that somebody has recorded that because you want to use it again. But ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio with comedian Cornbread Robinson. And we're talking about the Comedy in the Kingdom tour that we're going to bring to you next summer, the summer of 24. We have a common friend, Kenny, by the name of Donnie, the entertainer Stopa. And
yes,
Donnie is working on a contract with the platform to release a documentary that he has completed. And it's called Comedy versus the Cancel Culture.
Okay.
Going to play a trailer of that documentary. And when we come back, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. This is Donnie the Entertainer's comedy versus cancel culture documentary trailer.
Cancel culture. We're talking about censorship in comedy. Do you think that cancel culture exists in comedy?
Basically, in a nutshell.
Definitely feel like, as bizarre as it sounds, like there's a war on jokes right now.
Cancel culture, it's such a misdirected umbrella term. You can't police what is subjective.
Oh, wow! Like, you kind of have to live your life bulletproof now. You just have to.
Greatest night in the history of television.
You can't say an inappropriate joke that doesn't have the right context.
There's always going to be some sliver of cancel culture, of woke, of political correctness.
You're not funny, and this is how you have to do the joke, because I know how funny jokes work. That's not the joke.
I don't believe people get canceled. I believe that they have a shift in their audience.
Put your hands together for Mr. Joe Rogan!
When people say somebody is canceled, I think it just means, oh, we found they did or said something that most people don't like.
I date a lot of bimbos. That's the problem, man.
So what?
So let's think about that joke in today's culture.
Let's think about that joke in today's culture. I had a chance to do some online comedy during COVID with some of the comedians that were on that documentary. But, you know, I would like to ask you, Cornbread, what is your view, in light of the trailer we just watched, of stand-up comedy in today's era, and how is it perceived?
Well, the country, not just within comedy, the country has become divided along different lines, politically, socially, gender, religion. People are more. They're not all people, but and I think that a lot of the people that are not. Are getting tired of hearing it, but you have people that are looking to be offended.
Okay,
they are actually going out looking for a offense where none was ever intended.
Yeah,
but I think that's going to boomerang at some point. I think that the majority of people can laugh at themselves. I mean, listen to the way I talk. I mean, when you talk like me, people, like in my opening bit, people make assumptions about you when you sound like I sound. You know, they've already they've predetermined that because I sound like the way I sound, that I'm, you know, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take offense. You know, if people want to make fun of the way I talk, or they think I'm just a dumb hillbilly or whatever, I'm going to work that to make people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to take offense at it. And I think that in the long run, I think that counterculture will end itself. I think that people, that's my viewpoint on it. If you remember when George Carlin came out in the 60s,
mm-hmm.
he was saying stuff, you know, the 7 words you can't say on TV or radio, you know, and the stuff he was doing was so out there that everybody was being offended. And I'm sure that he got kicked out of comedy clubs and he got blacklisted, that he couldn't go here or he couldn't go there. But when we look back at the last 50 years of comedy, I mean, he's one of, you know, he's a very risque, you know, he was very edgy.
Yes.
To the nth degree, but he changed comedy. You know, he didn't allow himself to stop doing what he was doing. And I think that's what comedians have to do in this world of counterculture, is that, okay, if you do X, Y, or Z, then you're going to get canceled. And that means that you won't get onto the late night TV show. Some clubs may not book you. You know what? Keep telling the jokes. Don't back off. If anything, put your foot on the pedal and hit it even harder. And I mean, that's just the way I see it. I'm not going to change my jokes. Now I have different jokes. I mean, I counsel. I mean, if I'm doing, I don't do church jokes in a comedy club when I do a comedy club, and there's jokes that I do in a comedy club that I'm not going to do in church. They're all clean jokes.
Yeah.
But they're not appropriate for the audience or the demographic, as we talked about earlier, that I'm in front of.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to rewrite my jokes. If you don't like my jokes, don't buy a ticket, don't come out. And I'm not going to change who I am. I'm going to tell the jokes, because the people who do like what I do, they like me. And I don't need 50 million people to like me. I've got, if I can do 50 shows a year, and the people that come out, a couple hundred people come out for the show, and they have fun and they laugh and they go home and they feel better because they came to a Cornbread show, then I don't care if the other 50 million people think my joke's stupid or think that it's inappropriate or behind the times, or I'm just not going to. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Some people are going to like me, some people ain't, and I ain't worried about the ain'ts. I'll stick with the saints.
Well, the thing about it is, Cornbread, you're right. You can't make everybody happy. You were talking about George Carlin. George Carlin came along at a time where he did 10, I believe, I want to say 10 consecutive HBO specials that dominated the comedy airwaves.
Yes.
It was a time where his career actually exploded because he was willing to say those things that a lot of people may have been thinking.
Yes.
And he said it with no apology. And he endeared himself to a lot of people, and he had a great following. But during the 70s, there were other comedians that said things that they would not be able to say in 2023.
No.
And I can go with Richard Pryor, and I can go with your Eddie Murphys of the world, and so forth. That was an era where we saw stand-up comedy do things that most people didn't get as angry about then as they absolutely get angry about now. But you also have to be willing to stick to what you believe is funny, and you will develop a niche, as you accurately stated, a following, and you'll have a fan base. You can't make everybody happy. No. But you got to be true to yourself. And I think that's the key. Great points, Cornbread. Great points. You're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show, the Comedy in the Kingdom Tour Edition. Good morning, everyone. You're having a cup of coffee with Maurice Brown and Cornbread. You couldn't ask for anything more down home than that. We're talking about the Comedy in the Kingdom Tour that we're bringing your way in 2024 with great Christian comedians like Valina Metcalf and Kaysad Wilson, Michelle Van Dusen, Christy Condor, Leland Clausen, Robert G. Lee, Gilbert Esquivel, Danny Successful Simmons, Willie Brown, Cynthia Johnson, Joey Aiello, and Donnie the Entertainer Stopa. The trailer that we just watched and listened to, Comedy versus the Cancel Culture doc, coming out hopefully at the beginning of 2024. Cornbread, I want to ask you about comedy since COVID-19. Has comedy changed since COVID?
It is coming back. There are still a lot of venues, particularly in the church venues, that are not ready. They haven't recovered their attendance numbers that they had before. Some are reluctant to bring in, but the shows that I mentioned earlier, the shows, Don Hines up in the Delaware, New Jersey area, he's selling out every show. I did his show the middle of September, and Don just opened up a new venue where it's going to be in Delaware, and it's going to be he's just selling out everything that he's doing. So it's coming back. The shows that we did in North and South Carolina, just packed houses, and so it's coming back. And the great thing about comedy, though, is comedy opens other doors. I mentioned earlier, I do a lot of consulting work now, and a big part of that, it comes from the skills you learn as a comedian help you in all walks of life.
Yes.
You mentioned Dawn Davis Womack. Dawn only lives about 45 minutes from where I do, and in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And her husband have got a really fantastic comedy school now that they're operating there, and they're just really helping young comedians, sort of like when I did my classes at the DC Improv. They're doing classes to help young comedians find their voice, find their niche, write better jokes, provide better performances. Rick Roberts has a great online comedy program. You mentioned Robert G. Lee. Robert G. Lee has a great comedy school. So I think that here's the great thing about comedy in the churches. A comedian can say something in the church that needs to be said, and he'll get a laugh, and he can get away with it. Where if the pastor said the exact same thing on Sunday morning, the deacons and some of the church ladies would just wire him out come Monday.
Yeah,
they'd be on the phone to him. They'd be, he can't say the things that we can say, but we can say it, and they laugh about it because they know it's true. They knew it was true when the pastor said it on Sunday morning, and they got offended. Let the comedian come in on Sunday night and say the same thing, and they'll just laugh and laugh and laugh at it. So it gives us an opportunity to be that voice of truth and make fun of some of the things that are absolutely. I don't know if you remember or not, but you know who one of the first stand-up comedians was in the Bible.
Help me out on that one.
I'm going to help you with that. It was Elijah when he was up on with the prophets of Baal.
Yeah.
And they were going to have the contest to see which God would answer with fire. Would it be Jehovah God, the God of Elijah, or would it be Baal, the false god of the other people that lived there in that area? And so there was 400 prophets of Baal, and they were just crying out to their God. They'd put these 2 altars there, and they had put an oxen on each, and they'd built the fire. And so these prophets of Baal are just crying out, please, Baal, send fire, send fire. And here we have Elijah over there doing his Christian comedian thing, going, maybe you should scream a little louder. I bet your God's taking a nap. Hey, your God might be, having fun with one of his wives, and you just can't get his attention. Won't you try maybe screaming a little louder? And maybe he had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Your God may be on the throne. And so here we have Elijah over here mocking and making fun. And you know what's happening? All the people that's standing around, they're just laughing like crazy, because here's Elijah cracking jokes at the expense of the prophets of Baal. And then what they do when he gets through telling the jokes, Elijah says, hey, God, show them what it's about. And God sent down fire and burned up the sacrifice. And what do? The The people take them 400 prophets of Baal, they kill the suckers. Kill every one of them. Kill them all. So
killed them all.
That's where the stand-up thing comes about. He killed. When we say that if you kill on stage, that comes from Elijah.
Well, he literally
know that.
That's
Comedy 101 history lesson.
That's a Comedy 101 history lesson, Cornbread.
That's right. He killed. Elijah killed.
He did. He did kill, and that's a great story. The prophets of Baal all, bit the dust literally for that one, and it was hilarious. And
Yes,
comedy,
it's hilarious.
if you go to Proverbs, comedy works like a medicine. And
Absolutely.
when the pastor can't say something, the comedian can say the same thing, and just goes down a lot easier and a lot smoother.
Absolutely. It's like
And
the old spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
it helps the medicine go down, Kenny. There's
In
no
the most
question.
delightful way.
In a most delightful way, Kenny. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio with comedian Cornbread Robinson, talking about the comedy in the Kingdom Tour and all things comedy. Kenny, we're clean comedians. We're Christian comedians. And we are not bashing secular comedians because there's some great comedians out there. Do you think that hecklers go after the clean guys more so than the secular, or it just doesn't matter?
I'll be honest. I've never had a problem with hecklers. I've been blessed that I've never had that problem. Maybe once or twice, and usually I just comment how they're probably inbred like me, and that sort of just negates whatever they're saying. So I've never had a big problem with hecklers. I know a lot of clean comedians have problem with hecklers. A lot of secular comedians do. I've not ever had a whole big problem with it, but that is one of the nicer things about being in a church or a corporate or a charity event is you rarely get those hecklers in those. But I've been pretty fortunate to always been able to work through it. And if somebody is heckling, you can go. I'm not real bad about confrontation. I usually find some way to work around it and keep the show going, because the people, they bought a ticket. They want to hear the comedian. They don't want to hear the drunk guy at table number 3.
Has there ever been a time in your comedy career where you have felt pressured to use profanity or go to levels that you would not normally go to please a crowd?
Yes, I'll be quite honest. During that year and a half that I was doing the 150 to 200 open mics, most times if I was doing an open mic, I was at Dr. Dreamo's in Arlington or out at Wiseacres in Tyson's Corner. I might be the only clean comedian. And I found myself trying to see how close I could get to the edge of being, almost there with the bathroom joke or the bedroom joke, but not cross the line. And that was part of when I started feeling like I don't think I can do this. I've got, I guess I was of the mindset, I knew I wanted to do Christian comedy.
Yeah.
Not just clean comedy. I knew I wanted to do Christian comedy.
Yeah.
And so I took a period of time where when I moved over into Christian comedy, I said, I'm not going to do the clubs anymore. And I went through a couple years that I did not do any clubs at all, because I was afraid I would move back over, get too close to the edge. And some people will like this story, and some people will say, and all I can do is tell you this is what happened to me.
Yes, sir.
I was at a church on a Sunday night. That's not my regular church that I attend. And during the altar call, the pastor of that church, where I don't even attend, he called me up to the front, and people were being prayed over and people were being counseled and stuff. And he just sort of drew me to the side and just whispered it in my ear. And he said, God gave me a message for you. And he said to tell you, it's okay to go back in the clubs. That's exactly the word that he gave me.
Okay.
And so I said, okay. And I just took it at that. And I didn't think no more about it. That was on a Sunday night. Monday night, I went to play golf, or Monday morning, I went to play golf up in Northern Virginia. I was playing up near Manassas, and I got a call about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon from a secular comedian friend that said, "Hey, they're doing auditions tonight over at Liberty Laughs." It was a Comedy Zone affiliate in Fredericksburg, Virginia. He said, "They're doing auditions looking for MCs to host. I think you ought to go audition." And I said, "Okay, I will." The guy's name was Joe. I said, "Yeah, Joe, I'll meet you over there." So when I finished playing golf that afternoon, I left Manassas. I drove over to Fredericksburg, found the Liberty Laughs Comedy Club. It was above the bowling alley at that time, and auditioned. And after the auditions, there was about a dozen of us that auditioned. And after we got done, we each did like a 5-minute set. I was about middle of the pack. And when it was over, walked over to the table where the owner of the club was at, and he said, "Come here." And I walked over to him. He said, "I didn't do church jokes or anything. I just did a clean set though." But he said, "You're a Christian, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." I said, "How'd you know?" He said, "My father's a pastor." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "My father is a Lutheran pastor." And he said, "I could tell you were a Christian." He said, "Hey, you want to MC this weekend's shows? I got to be out of town, and I think I could trust you to run the shows Friday and Saturday night." We agreed on a price, and I was there Friday night, Saturday night, MCing the show. So
nice.
That was God telling me that I was strong enough in my faith that I wasn't going to cross over into the profanity, wasn't going to get over into the bedroom and bathroom jokes, that I could go in the comedy club, that I could be clean, and audiences would like it.
I love it. Great story. And you stuck to your guns, obviously, and it's worked out quite well for you. Another part of comedy is bombing on stage. You talked about all of the times that you had gone through the open mic experience, trying to get that time. And some comics are not able to handle it as well as others. Let me ask you, are you one? Because it's inevitable. We all bomb.
We all do.
Part of the game. But when it happens to you, when it has happened to you, are you one of those people that can just flick it off, or does it take you a few days to get over?
No, it's miserable. It just you drive home and you feel like somebody has killed your dog. I mean, you just, I mean, literally. I remember I did one in Abingdon, Virginia, for a friend at a church, and it was some kind of employee volunteer banquet, and one of the worst shows I had ever done in my life. And it was like a 3-hour drive home after it was over. I got out there at 9 or 9:30, 10 o'clock. I drove home, and for 225 miles up Interstate 81, I just literally just beat myself up for a good 3 hours. And I felt bad about that show for 2 or 3 weeks. And so no, I can't flick it off if I don't even have a really good show, not just bomb. If I don't have a really good show, no, I get down on myself. I want every show to be a great show. And if it's not, no, I beat myself up driving home.
Now, are there some things when it does inevitably happen? Because again, as I said,
it happens
to all comedians. Are there some things that, and I'm asking this question because it usually, I know for me, provides some solace if you can go back and identify the things that you did wrong that you could do better the next time?
I think so. I think that particular night, I think what I learned from that was I was trying too hard.
Okay.
I got out of my comfort zone. I was too anxious and too too excited that I didn't. I forgot to. I tell you what. This has been 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't have fun on stage.
Okay.
I forgot to have fun.
Yeah.
I was wanting so much to have a good show for my friend that I forgot to have fun. And if I'm not having fun on stage, the audience can't have fun. And that's why the show didn't go the way I wanted. And I forgot to have fun. And that was probably the thing I learned the most from that one is there's Sean Sarvis.
I do.
You know Sean. Sean has a saying, it was funny to me first. That's one of his if he tells a joke and don't nobody else in the whole room laugh, Sean will still just crack up at himself. He'll say, y'all may not be getting this, but it was funny to me first. And so that's the key. As a comedian, I've got to have fun. If comedy is contagious, there's three things it really needs to be. It needs to be contagious. It needs to be outrageous. And I can't remember the other word that rhymes with rageous, but it's out there somewhere. We'll talk about it whenever I think of it. But you've got to be outrageous and you've got to be contagious. And if you're not having fun on stage, the audience cannot have fun out there watching you.
No, they can't. And I think that usually there's something you can identify that you did wrong, that you missed, you forgot to have fun, as you accurately stated.
That other righteous word is courageous.
Ah, there it is.
You gotta be brave enough to do the things that you got to be brave enough and courageous enough to say the things that nobody else will say. And that sort of goes back to the council culture, goes back to Carlin, goes back to all the people. You got to say what the people are thinking, but are afraid to say out loud. That's the courageous part.
And that's a strong part of comedy. We say things that most people are thinking, but would not dare say. And it doesn't matter if it's clean or profane, it's comedy, and people think all kinds of things, and we're the ones that give the outlet and permission to laugh out loud about those unmentionables. And I think you do have to be courageous. And when you go down, and sometimes unfortunately in flames, you go back and go, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done more of this or whatever. And invariably, you get better at that.
You get better
as a comedian. But yeah, a tough part of the long game of comedy. I remember Sean Sarvis. You mentioned Sean Sarvis. I talked with Sean a few years ago, and he shared on during an interview about a time where he had bombed at a rap concert. And he had to, and the only way he could get out of the venue was to walk through the crowd. And on his way out, he overheard these two girls say, "He was so bad." And John said he had to go get therapy for that.
Okay.
And I went, wow. But God bless him for his honesty. Sean, he's just one of those type guys that he just kind of just flicks stuff off. But it's a heavy weight. To your point about driving 3 hours back home, nothing but replaying, that bombing experience. But I'm telling you, we're built different from most other people because we will get over it and we will be back.
Well, I'll tell you that night I felt so bad I almost didn't cash the check.
Man, oh my goodness!
But I didn't feel that bad.
No, Kenny, you didn't feel that bad. I didn't think you felt that bad now, Kenny. Hold on. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show, the Comedy of the Kingdom Tour edition with comedian Kenny Cornbread Robinson on Bog Radio in association with 24 Flicks. Kenny, we're going to get you out of here on this one. What advice can you leave with young, aspiring comedians out there, particularly clean comedians, Christian comedians that have made it up in their minds that's how they're going to do this thing. They're going to be clean, and they're not going to make any excuses, and they're young. What advice can you give them?
You find a mentor. I had some great mentors. Now my first, like I say, my first comedy coach that I took the classes were Matt Kazam. Matt is not a clean comedian. He can do clean when he does a corporate event, but Matt was the first one that taught me just the simple things. The rule of three. Where to put the mic stand when you first hit the stage. How to write good jokes, how to develop premises and how to do setups, and then, callbacks and taglines and all those kinds of things. So, comedians, like you say, stand-up comedy is different than being funny at a dinner party or with your friends watching the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But you find a mentor. It's little things. One of my mentors was Barry Lee McGee, and one of the things that Barry taught me was why comedians ask questions, and when to ask questions. Every comedian hits the stage. What they do, the first thing they do, how y'all doing tonight? They ask questions, and throughout their set, they ask questions. There's a reason for that. And there's a right time to ask questions, and there's a wrong time to ask questions. So it's those little bitty things like that you learn from a mentor that could take years and years and years to discover by accident on your own. So find a mentor, and then once you start learning, find a protege, find someone that you can teach. Because you need to always have one hand reaching up forward for somebody to pull you and bring you forward. But at the same token, you're reaching back to help somebody that's younger and less developed than you at it, and help bring them along. Because teaching comedy will help you develop consciousness about that you are doing things because you're aware of them. So find a mentor that will help you, and then find a protege that you can help. Those will help your comedy more than anything.
They will. And you mentioned, there's a time, to ask questions. And usually, I know for myself, you want to come out there and get, a couple of good ones out there, get people laughing. And then, you have a chance to take a sip of water and maybe say, how you guys doing? You got them laughing, right off the rip. And you're able to be a little bit conversational, explore your set a little bit with some things you got in the middle. But there's all kind of ways to slice this thing, Kenny. But get a mentor. If you're young out there, get a mentor.
Yes,
and get some guidance.
Go to some conferences, take some classes. One of the best things I've got, I went out to Pasadena and took some classes out at the Ice Palace out there, and Jimmy Brogan gave me one of the best pieces of advice, and that was, as a comedian on stage, you want it to be a conversation, not a presentation. And so that goes back to the thing that you've got to be having fun. A lot of times when you're watching the football game with your friends, it's a conversation. It's not a presentation. But 4 or 5 friends sitting around watching a football game, or sitting in a restaurant around a table, you can just laugh and laugh and laugh for hours on end, because it's a conversation. It's not a presentation. And as a comedian, when you can develop the rapport with your audience, that it feels like a conversation, only instead of 5 people sitting on the couch watching the ball game, it's 50 or 500 in a theater or in a club or in a church, that every person in that room feels like you're having a conversation with them. That's when comedy is magic.
I saw Jimmy Brogan in San Diego. I went out to a comedy conference out there, a clean comedy conference out there about, 7, 8 years ago. And Jimmy Brogan is an older guy. He's an old school comic. You may have seen him on Johnny Carson, but he was the kind of guy that you could just kind of take a newspaper and talk about articles he's reading with the audience and just kill. And he didn't have a routine. He didn't write anything out. He was very spontaneous. And he would actually, because most people are condescending, they're thinking this old guy can't make me laugh. And they've made it up in their minds that they're going to be smart, because he gives you the opportunity to be a smart mouth with
Yes,
him.
he does. He invites the hecklers.
He sets you up to destroy you. I mean, and he doesn't do it in a way that makes you feel bad. It's kind of like, the person goes, "Yeah, I asked for that," and you kind of like laugh with the audience instead of feeling bad about it. Awesome comedian, great reference. Jimmy Brogan's an awesome guy. I love Jimmy. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio, the Comedy and the Kingdom Tour, with comedian Kenny Cornbread Robinson on Bog Radio in association with 24 Flicks. Also, courtesy of KCHF TV in Albuquerque, New Mexico, every Saturday night at 12 midnight. And then again at 8 p.m., you can watch the Maurice Brown Comedy Show in its entirety. We are also heard where all major podcasts are heard on Spotify. We want to thank you for stopping by and having a cup of coffee with me and Kenny this morning on Bog Radio. Kenny, thank you so much once again. As always, a treat to have you on the show. God bless you, brother, and may the peace of Christ be with you and your family. God bless you.
I gotta go get a refill. Thanks for having me. Thank you for having me, Maurice.
Amen. Anytime, Kenny. Anytime.